Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good
Yes,
evening.
okay. Glad to have everybody on our final Zoom program of the membership year. Yeah, so first, a couple of sad notes, which we'll have a moment of silence. First, we're just talking about those 5 people who died when their submersible imploded on the way down to the Titanic site, and of course the train wreck people in India. So I'm going to ask for a moment of silence, about 15 seconds, starting now. Thank you very much. Okay. So one of the things that Paul was alluding to is in the midsummer for those people who are e-bulletin subscribers, we're going to be having a special e-bulletin, special edition. There'll be no hard copies on this one. If people want to get that, those of our brethren who are still on hard copy and do not have a password or whatever, you can join the 21st century and then we'd be able to take care of them. That's basically it.
Okay. I did get a July submission for John Beam with Steam News.
Yes.
Yeah.
Since there's not really a limit with the pages, I probably will run it. So while Larry Penner is in hand here, just so he knows, and he really wants to do a column for the summer issue, he may care to, that's fine. I might ask him to make it sort of a lampoon type of article if he really wants to make it a zing for the summer, okay?
Yeah.
Think of this like Saturday Night Live.
Larry can be accommodating depending upon the situation.
I'm sure.
There's sure enough situations with the MTA to make fun of.
Definitely.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
Summer comedy.
Yeah, we're about to be hit with a rate
You can't make it up.
increase.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're going to get hit with a rate increase. On my senior Metro card, the share is going to be going up 15 cents because the full fare is going up that much more. So
90. Yep.
and on the Long Island, I think it's like somebody correct me if I'm wrong, it's a 10% or a 4% increase
4%.
on that.
4%.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. So what I was also thinking, there's a number of other things, that we're thinking about, but that has to pass by the board before we can make that public. So, anybody want to bring up something that I may have forgotten? All right. With that in mind, I will turn the next comments over to our program manager, Mr. Pablo Calca.
Thank you, Chairman Foz. First of all, I want to welcome everybody to our last membership meeting of the calendar season. It's unbelievable that here we are at June, and we're going to go out with a blast. The most very much anticipated final part 3 of George Chiasson's trilogy on the Illinois Central Railroad. And this will be the most well-known section of the railroad involving the city of New Orleans, and will be in very good hands with G tonight. And looking ahead, as was mentioned, we're going to have some value added for your members with the Midsummer Bulletin coming out approximately in the middle of August. So keep your eyes peeled for that on your emails. We're going to open with a bang in September, folks. September 22nd. We're going to have a new presenter, at least new for us, Mr. Frank Shear, who's going to give a program on the railway post office as it operated on the 20th Century Limited. So this was not only the RPO, but the apogee of the RPO
Oh.
on the premier train of the New York Central Railroad. So we'll look to welcome Mr. Shear, to our presenter roundtable. We're going to follow up with tremendous program for you in October, none other than Andrew Brawl. Topic to be determined over the summer. So we already have 2 dynamite programs to look forward to in September and October. And as Sheldon alluded to, hopefully we'll have some more value added information for you at the prior to the September meeting and hopefully in the September bulletin. So as I've mentioned, tonight's program, and it's only symbolic of the fact that the Railroad Enthusiasts presents the very finest rail fan entertainment to you every month, every year, and tonight is certainly no exception in the guise of Gigi Chiasson and a much anticipated show. And this is probably the crown jewel of the Illinois Central System, the city of New Orleans. So without any further interruption, I will yield the floor to none other than Gigi Chiasson. Take it away.
Take it away.
I take it I'm already co-host.
If you are co-host, yes.
Okay, this is the third of the trilogy for the Illinois Central. First one was done, I think, a year ago. It showed
I think so.
the Electric Division in Greater Chicago. The
Oh,
second
yes.
part was done, I believe, in March, which I call the north section from Chicago to Fulton, Kentucky.
Right.
And really, that's about the halfway part. So today we're going to start. I'm just going to show you maybe a picture or two to overlap with part 2, and then we're going to go right into part 3 and go south from there, all the way to the New Orleans Union Passenger Terminal. Okay. There's lots and lots of little side stories if I don't forget them, or if I start to gab too long at one picture, give me a kick in the butt and I'll push the button to move it.
Oh, should I mute everyone?
If you like to, sure.
Okay, that would be.
They don't object.
Oh,
But if you want, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to pipe in with a question or a comment, feel free. I'm not the world's most foremost expert of the Illinois Central. Actually, I forgot to email John Allen about the show, but he said he doesn't really know much about the South End anyway. He's a Chicago guy. Okay.
Right.
And I don't think he was able to find Fulton, Kentucky on a map. So that's why I didn't ask him, because he failed his examination, his geography examination for the IQ.
Exactly.
Anyway, let me see what I can do about getting this show going here. Okay.
okay.
Hold on.
Share screen.
I gotta find the stupid file, which are, oh, there's a dumb picture. I guess they probably should have moved on. I forgot. You get old like this, you forget these little things. Okay, here we are. There you go. South. There we go. Okay. And let's see. Okay. There we go. So we have the same map that we had before. Now let me see if I can get that little hide video panel. No, that does help. Hide floating, but there we go. Now I can see the whole picture. Okay, that's good. So if you remember, we had a map for the area of the Illinois Central that was involved with the show. This is just for background, a review of part one and two from Chicago to Fulton, Kentucky, just to give you, if you're just to try to refresh your memory of what was where then, okay? And we move into the, wait a minute, if it's there. Sometimes the software isn't working too well. Hold on. Hang on. Okay. This is part two, but we're missing the Tennessee map for some reason. Hold on a second. Let me try something else. Okay, just a second. Okay,
All right.
hang on.
We're waiting, Gigi.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes you have to tell the computer exactly what to do, otherwise it won't know. There, that's better. That's more like it, huh?
Yeah, that's good.
There you go. And this is the one that has the
Good.
scale, so you can actually see the map. Okay,
Nice.
there we go. So like I said, we're down at Fulton, Kentucky. For part one. There's part two. There's the second map. It's the Tennessee region, which is like the middle, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm gonna check to my big monitor now because I don't need the. What I'm gonna do is shut off the video. Okay. I don't have to worry about that. There we go. Okay, so anyway, this is the second map. We start at Fulton, Kentucky. It shows you the towns down through the state of Tennessee, through greater Memphis and into northern Mississippi. And that's the area map or diagram for the Illinois Central through Memphis, okay? The first thing to know, everything basically goes down the main line. The Bluford district used to be used much more when the Illinois Central was an independent railroad. CN kind of downgraded that, so everything goes on the main line where they concentrate their financial resources for maintenance and crewing and all that sort of thing. So everybody's going the same way, okay? Generally what happens is when the trains come down into Memphis, they will generally all go around the city of Memphis, okay? I think they probably have one freight train in here, maybe one freight train every 2 weeks or something ridiculous like that. That's where the city of New Orleans goes through the Memphis, is it Union Station? I think it's called there. Okay. Another thing, little fact with that, the line through Memphis is right next to the Memphis trolley. The Memphis Area Transportation Authority streetcar system uses the Illinois Central as an easement for its private right-of-way toward, but not to, the railroad station, okay? So you'll see more railroading on the streetcar on that than you will on the trains, because both Amtrak, City of New Orleans, pass through there in the wee hours of the morning. Okay, unless they're very late, you won't see practically anything unless you get very, very lucky. Okay, so anyway, moving on, south of Memphis, the final map, it begins way up here in the state of New Orleans, okay? At Memphis, this is the original main line down here. The Grenada district, as it's called, which was downgraded years ago by the IC. Amtrak used to go this way. I have a slide, I think it's from Eric Gustowitz, actually at Grenada, Mississippi. I want to say it was in the mid 1980s or somewhere, like 1986 or 87. Amtrak was still going this way. But by the time it ended, it was only going like 15 miles an hour. It was kind of ridiculous. So anyway, IC basically rerouted the New Orleans, city of New Orleans onto the main line all the way down to Jackson. Okay, and they run hand in hand with all the freight trains. So it's great for rail fanning because really at any good location, any given location, you really don't know what's coming next. And the Amtrak will start to run in daylight hours during this time as well. So there's all kinds of single tracking with, passing action and stuff like that. And usually somewhere in the parade, you'll see Amtrak go both ways, okay? And then when you get to Jackson down here, Jackson Yard, where the two lines come back together, like I said, the Grenada district was sold. It's now a secondary line. I forget what the company that took it over. I think as usual, IC now CN retains trackage if they need it, but they probably don't use it. And then south of there, you have the approach down through southern Mississippi into the great state of Louisiana. And then it comes down basically parallel to Interstate 55 and around Lake Pontchartrain and enters city of New Orleans, okay? I do have, let me see now, in here, I do have a city of New Orleans highlight right here. Okay, you see, I'll get that a little bit larger so you can see it better. There we go. Okay, now the southern end of the railroad is not much younger than the northern end. The IC, I believe, was originally established through the state of Illinois as named in 1851. It didn't go to Chicago until much later. That's actually a branch. It went straight north up toward the Wisconsin state, okay? Wisconsin state line. South down in Mississippi and New Orleans, it was hewn, literally quite hewn, inch by inch out of nature. And they used to have big kinds of problems here. There's always stories about they found a tribe of pygmies in the middle of nowhere.
Really?
At one point, it sounds like something you'd see in an old movie about Africa or something. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, it's very, very swampy. So, back then they didn't have the technology for such thing to stabilize the ground like they do now. So they would build the right of way, a mile of track one day. And for whatever reason, there would be a tidal shift and they could lose 2 or 3 miles of track overnight. It's just gone.
Wow.
Because yeah, it would fall in the swamp and stuff like that. So what you're going through is a right of way that was very hard won, probably until about the 1870s, I would say. It finally was stabilized enough that that sort of thing would no longer happen. And some of the population began to build up and stuff like that. And then you finally made it. New Orleans, I think, goes back to, as a city, I believe, of course, it was originally founded by the French. And I think it goes back to something in the early 1700s, okay?
Yes.
Flooding problem.
What's that? Oh, I can hear Sheldon.
I was just talking about the flooding problems that you had mentioned, G.
Yeah. Well, no, just talking about the city of New Orleans history, local history. It dates to the early 18th century, at least.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a French colonial city originally. I don't even think it was a city. I think it was just a territory, actually. Okay. And it was all purchased as part of the 1803 Louisiana purchase. Yes. Yeah. So anyway. So let me go back here and we'll start the pictures, I guess, which is what I do. Mind, I'll get over to this and hopefully it'll work. There we go.
Good.
So we're back with as I said, with the photo viewer. The reason is because most of these images are originally 35 millimeter slides that I scanned, and they're mixed with digitals. I never took a digital myself on the IC because I was there too early. What I did is I interspersed pictures from the railroad archive like last time to fill in locations all the way to New Orleans, and it builds out the show very nicely, and it shows you how the railroad has developed since my last visit in 2001 as well. Because when I was there, the reason I went these 2 years was because I did the last year of the original IC and the first year of the new CN that took over. Okay, so the last picture that I gave you, your chapter in March was this train. It was I-03 at the time, It was stopping at Fulton, Kentucky for a crew change, which they didn't waste any time. Usually it's less than 5 minutes. You see two guys come on with all their bags. They throw it to the sideline. Two guys with bags get on and they go up in the cab. They do a running brake test, might toot the horn or something like that. Crazy, turn the ditch lights on. And next thing you know, it's starting to growl and she just keeps moving. Okay. Basically, that's the way it works. It might stop for a very very short time. Okay. But anyway, so this is looking north from the overpass. That's literally at the north end of the yard. Okay. And this is down on the level, street level. Same thing. The bridge that you couldn't see on the picture is immediately above the back of your head here. Okay.
Oh,
So this is another picture in the same general place. Eric Zustowitz took this perhaps 30 something years ago. No, 27 years ago. So, okay, that same overpass that I'm standing on for the first picture, that was looking north. If you go across the road and look south, this is the same overpass. And at this point, you're looking at the state of Tennessee. Okay, that's how close it is. And it's, Fulton isn't exactly the friendliest place in the world, at least, and especially probably for rail fans. When I was on the bridge, I was there for almost an hour because nobody, the police could care less. Nobody was really bothering me, but people were throwing trash at me. They threw bottles at me. They were spitting at me, yelling at me, doing the what do you call it? The rebel yelling, that kind of stuff. Okay. I guess I must have been written, Northeasterner in my face or something like that. And they were trying to do everything they could to abuse me and make sure I wasn't welcome, but the heck with them. Okay. So anyway, this is looking south. It says there it's a local freight. So it's a yard shifter. Okay. This was a road train that came in to change crews, and actually it was being consolidated. I see when this was taken, Harrison was running the IC into the CN, and he was great on combining trains to make them 1,000,000 miles long if he could to save a crew. Okay. And in those days, of course, they had the alpha symbols. GETO was Geismar, which is down in southern, it's in Louisiana, west of New Orleans, and TO is Tolona, Illinois. Okay. And actually that means it would turn on to the Norfolk Southern to head over toward Ohio. Okay. It may still in a different symbol. I really don't know. So what they did is they combined that coal train with GETO, and there you go. That's your first inklings of precision railroad. Was it PRC, whatever it's called there? What's common today. Okay. And that's really what Harrison was famous for. And I don't think the train was quite 2 or 3 miles long back then, but it was long enough for the time. Okay. So moving along from Fulton at last, the first location south of there is Harris, Tennessee. By that time, we're getting into CN symbols. I really don't, I'd have an index. I could find out what it was at the time, but just trust it's a CN train, most likely down toward at least to Jackson. Okay. And certainly it lasts at least to Memphis. Okay. Here's one of your railroad archive digitals. If you'll notice, this is 2012. It's 10 years now after the merger. It's an SD70, and this location is still painted original Illinois Central black and white. The SD70s, for whatever reason, were never really repainted. I think they might have done 1 or 2 to CN colors, but that was it. And everything basically stayed in factory or repainted factory paint. I think they may still, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So, Tennessee is a pretty rural state in general, and where the IC is, it's on the western end of the state. Okay. So you're right along pretty much fast to the Mississippi River. And this is very, very, very gray, if you will, for the Confederation. Okay. And their successors. Okay. Yeah, there's another one, 2010. There's one of your SD70s in the original Illinois Central colors. Seems like it's holding up pretty good, but you can see the rust and stuff here. It's probably factory paint. By that time, it's 11 years old and very weathered. That would be SD40-2 rebuild. Most likely these were either downgraded or gradually retired and replaced by CN wide cabs. I think I went through that before. Actually, this is a good picture to mention that. When the CN took over in 2001, the union on the CN in Canada, across the border, they consolidated with the union that had been on the Illinois Central and basically kind of took over, and they set the rules, the operating rules for the railroad. They're from south to New Orleans. Okay. So the IC people really, there's two things. They preferred the cowl kind of cab, and they often have the habit of running long hood running. Okay. For whatever reason, that was sort of their local preference, but when CN took over, the trains were coming through from God knows where. Let's say, for example, Winnipeg to New Orleans, the motive power was coming all the way through. And the CN union preferred wide cab or safety cabs 100%. So they sort of forced it on the old IC people. Okay. So it's kind of a mix. And I suspect that might be the reason why these SD70s remain as they were, because the local workers down there are kind of trying to tell CN that, listen, you might be a big company, but we still run the railroad in the great state of Tennessee and Mississippi and Louisiana. Or in another word, get lost. That was kind of their way of doing that, I believe. And it probably still is, as far as I know. How many are left by now? Who can say? Okay. The Tin Can was a regional connecting railroad for local routes that the IC either started with and owned and leased out. There was a whole bunch of lines that the IC had that were later on part of the GM&O as well. The GM&O was so anyway, there was all kinds of branches all over the place, and the TK is one of the secondary companies that took them over. For what it's worth. And of course, I got lucky and just happened to see one of their trains there. Okay. Moving around. Dyersburg it's a yard for the ICCN. It's not a passenger stop, but it's quite busy and it's great for pictures. It's also quite accessible. It's still basically the same if you go there today. Just be ready. It's awful hot. And like around here today, it's very, very humid. So you got to be ready with lots and lots of drinking water. Okay. Anyway, as another local. So it's the sort of place you'd swear there's going to be an Amtrak station or an old depot there, but there's nothing there. It's just a yard location. That's all. There's your digital. I'm not sure. Says SD60. I'm not really sure what the origin is for that location. Probably should have looked, but it's rebuilt from something with an American railroad that the CN bought because they were short on power and they wanted American American compatible locomotives from the get-go. Okay. CN had a lot of quirks. Canadian locomotives tend to have a few quirks on board here and there that American crews really don't get used to easily. So what CN did, they turned it around and they bought a whole bunch of American locomotives and they made few modifications. So then the Canadian crews had to figure out how to make this stuff work. Okay. But it was all CN. Anyway, kind of looks like the weather today with the gray skies and the thunder. steamy. It's very steamy, as you can see. You can actually, that's what I mean. You can see the steaming. See how the grass is already fading to yellow here. This is only May. Okay. Steamy, steamy, steamy. That's kudzu. Anybody care for some kudzu here? Kudzu, I've heard it called everything. I don't know what, but anyway. Anybody have a preferential to how it's pronounced? No? So anyway, we're just cruising south in the state of Tennessee. There's a Amtrak, well, not an I'm sorry, it's IC depot. It was no longer or not used by Amtrak. The depot survived. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. And the ice is for the crews that currently use it for local switching and stuff. They always have to have bags and bags and bags and truckfuls of ice delivered because these things will empty probably in less than a day. Okay. When you get these guys coming, they're sweaty as hell. And they'll take they have a key to get in the ice chest there, and they'll throw 6 or 8 bags of ice on the cab apron there, or inside it. Let's see. Okay, that's by that time it's a CN. This is a coal train from BNSF. It's probably a load, probably originally coming from Powder River, if I had to guess. Okay, originally, I think. You'd have to tell by the gondolas, but I can't see them that well. This is in the outer suburbs for Memphis. Woodstock is kind of in the outskirts. Okay. That's just a local power. It's turned out for the weekend. It just sat there all weekend. Nobody bothered. There's one of your SD70s there. As they say, the SD70 is telling the CN guys how it's done. Okay. Whoops, what was that? Wait a minute. Something happened there. Okay, there we go. I don't know why I did that. Okay, anyway, so this is Hollywood Yard. Like I told you, the railroad will divert around the city of Memphis itself. So the way this is set up, the Fulton subdivision, I go around the city to the eastern edge, okay? That is a unit there that probably spent most of its life north of the border. You can tell by the miles. I mean, it sings. The thing probably blows its horn in French or in Cree, some Indian language or something like that. You know, who knows? But anyway, it's very, very Canadian locomotive, way out of place here. Okay, even back then. I think they're all gone now. And that's was an IC SD40 that was rebuilt by CN. I believe it was done in-house on the CN in Kentucky there. What do you call it? Where the big shop is there. Not far from Fulton. I can't think of the little city there. Paducah, Kentucky, I believe. Okay. And then this is on the eastern edge of Memphis. It's in the middle of the city, but you'd never know it. And they're shared with CSX. It's the former L&N as a trackage rights, okay? They share the maintenance and all that sort of thing. It gets interesting because then when things happen, the railroads have to bill each other for how much maintenance is done by each railroad. How many ties did you use? I used 62. How many? 69. How many? 90. That's more like it. Okay. So you run up the charges against your other railroad. That's how that kind of works. Okay. Or that's how it can work. And this is coming into the old Johnston Yard. I say Johnston, that was its former name. Harrison is named after EHH himself today. There's one overpass that's good for pictures, and that's really where everybody takes their pictures where I am. or they're on the ground at the same place. It's the same, it's one location. All the trains seem to change crews in the same place. And if you notice, this is the probably the newest picture on the entire show. If you'll notice, it's November 2022. It's only what, 7 months old now? No. Yeah, 7 months old now. Okay. And as you can see, the good old CN and the good old IC seems to be just streaming right along. This location here in SD 40-3, my goodness, that's got to be up under 40 years old now, and it's still going. You know, it's amazing. And there's probably a lot more old locations on the railroad today than the employees to operate them. I think that's kind of a snapshot of how things are going right now. Okay. Because everybody is retiring if they can. So that's the end of the Fulton subdivision. And we'll get into the Memphis subdivision, okay? Now this starts at the Memphis Amtrak station today, as it's known. Like I said, I think it's actually technically known as Memphis Union Station. Eric Zustowitz took this photo again, 1996, when the, as they call them then, the Pepsi cans were pretty new. Okay. And you know, I think this is early in the morning. If I had to guess, I'll get a little bit inside here. Do you see this person standing here? Eric is standing on the east side of the right of way. The station is to it on the right frame here. This person here is a certain guy you may know, was Glenn Smith. You recall him?
Yes, I remember him.
So there he was in the flesh. As far as I know, he's still around, but he's at a nursing home, I believe in the Bronx. He's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's Glenn again. Okay, he's doing a time photo here. Okay, and Glenn is probably coaching him, telling him just how long to hold the plunger, how to set his focus, because he'd have a tripod and everything. Okay, and it probably took 15 minutes just to take a couple of these shots, a couple of slides. That's photography in its, you know, in its day. Okay. And Eric was very good at it, and he still is. He's probably great at it even now. I think he still uses film, believe it or not.
Really?
I believe so. I think that's what he prefers. But anyway, this is a picture I took by the time I got there, was September 2001. And again, you know, we stayed at the motel overnight in a sweaty overnight. Of course, you know what happened with me? I'd get to the platform, I'd be all excited and get to the train, and I'd take my rented car down as far as I could and walk to the locomotives, get the camera out of the case, turn it around, and what would happen? What would happen in Memphis or anywhere south of there or around there? First thing in the morning, the thing's been sitting in the air-conditioned hotel room all night. And when it gets exposed to the severe humidity, when you open your camera, you have fog lens for a good 15 or 20 minutes. Sometimes it was inside the camera, sometimes it's outside. It was a mess. Okay.
Inside the camera, if it sealed up, how did that?
Oh, it was condensation. Yes. So I had to learn somehow to leave the cameras in the vehicle all night so they could stay in the temperature, you know, ambient temperature outside, and then they wouldn't fog first thing in the morning. But it was all kinds of comedy because of that. I'd be there in a great picture, the camera's there, I'm there, and I can't do a damn thing with it because the camera can't see, it's fogged out. That's rail fanning for you, okay? So anyway, when it finally left, I thought it was a great shot on the crossing. Turns out this is actually was part of the old Southern Pacific at its end. Okay, and then of course Union Pacific shares it with Norfolk Southern today, and that's their shop for the old Chicago Central, which was part of the original Illinois Central that went from Chicago west toward Omaha. That was the company that took it over. And it was actually using former Illinois Central power or a bunch they bought from Milwaukee Road. The power was actually only used in Chicago and West, but this is how they maintained it in Memphis. Because again, it's a matter of where the labor is, what the rates are, and whatever the company's management is best to set it up to suit them. Okay. So these were taken in the 90s when Eric and Glenn passed through here on the city of New Orleans between Chicago and New Orleans for transit rail fanning. These just happen to be passing by. Okay. Of course, the SP disappeared in 1997. I was lucky enough, I got lots of pictures of them out west. I think actually 1991 was 1992. Yeah, no, 91. That's right. In the area, Chicago area, I got some pictures of the SP at first. And I got lots and lots of them before they went bust in 1997. Neither of these have a crew on board. So now we're back. We're starting back again at Johnston Yard. And our tour is going to continue from Johnston Yard, which is located southeast of Memphis itself. And we'll start our trip south of that. Okay. So this is just kind of showing you the same train at different angles and things like that. And immediately when you leave Johnston Yard and make a left to the south, you cross into the state of Mississippi right away. It's like by feet. And that's where these locations are. This is a former Conrail C40-8W that they used to use as seasonal leased power for whatever their traffic demanded until the company stopped in 1999. The CN bought them in 2001, I believe it was. And this is one of the locations I was telling you about where the Canadian Union preferred wide cabs, quote unquote. And they literally got wide cabs to use those as many as they could on the lines. If you notice, it says IC, meaning it's supposed to be assigned to the Chicago to New Orleans portion. Okay. And really the local crews, I mean, that wasn't their cup of tea. The union was kind of forcing it to them. And then, like I say, there's always been a little bit of friction about that. Okay. So, like I said, we leave Memphis now. You can see Amtrak pretty much both ways sometime during the day, all the way from here, depending how it's timing, basically all the way down to New Orleans somewhere both ways. Okay. So that's an early morning passage. Here's one of your digitals fairly recently. That's the back of a coal train, a DPU. It was sitting there waiting for another train to pass in the combine the passing siding. And I knew it was coming at me. So I just decided to let the passage go. And there's really not much else to see here anyway. So now you've seen Lake Cormorant, Mississippi. Welcome for all of 20 people who may live there. Okay. Plus tons and tons and tons of mosquitoes. Okay. That doesn't count the mosquitoes. Anyway, okay. So yeah, so that's, like I say, that's where we're going. And you notice that the land again is flat, much like it was in Illinois, but it's also quite wet. It's swampy. It's not really arable like it is in Illinois, where you'd see corn at the wayside. This is certain places they can grow stuff, but generally it's just nothing, just railroad. That's it. Okay. Very flat. It's great for long trains that can run 70 miles an hour. Harrison loved that. That's what he made his bones on. Okay. This overpass, this trestle here probably dates originally from the 1850s somewhere. That could be like the 12th generation of the stupid thing. Okay. There's your a little bit of your wilds, if you will. A little hamlet somewhere. Poverty in the state of Mississippi is endemic. You got to understand that if you're going to go there, you have to be kind of ready for it, because you're going to see people living a lot differently than you would likely be used to in the great Northeast, okay? I don't say shut it out or whatever. That's up to you how you respond, but you would notice it if you go there. And usually people are pretty friendly. Some of them are even rail fans, okay? They don't know much about anything out where they are, but they sure know the railroad where they're at, okay? I think that's a defect on the scan there. Okay. But that's okay. You get the idea. That's a bunch of ex-KCS SD40s that CN took in just after the merger because they were running short on power all of a sudden. Okay. And if you'll notice, this one is marked GTW for Grand Trunk Western. Again, they have districts that the power is supposed to be kept at, but being CN and it, like every other railroad, it wanders all over the place. So God knows what you're going to see. In fact, this unit, Grand Trunk, I have a photo of a sister unit, which I want to say is 5840. I think it was 5842. Okay. I chased it. It was the leading power on the old Central Vermont train 555. That used to be the one that went from Brattleboro, I believe, up to St. Albans and up toward Montreal. And we chased it. I can't tell you how many times on the CV, the old CV. And that's what they used to use for their main locomotive was the GP38s like that. They'd have a string of 2 or 3 GP38s and a train of could be 130 cars under load, and they did just fine. You know, climbing the mountains, climbing the hills, the dales, everything. That's another great show I should think about giving you guys sometime is chasing the CV. Now, it's hard to believe the CV is almost gone now for 30 years. I can't believe it myself, tell you. Anyway, continuing, like I say, in rural Mississippi. Makes you think of the movie. The most famous movie made in the state of Mississippi, of course, was The Night of the Heat or The Heat of the Night.
Yes.
Okay. 1966, I believe, was filmed on the GM&O. They said, I don't know if it really was. That's what they said. I don't have a railroad map of 1966 to tell me for sure. That depot needs a little help, don't you think? And actually, when we were taking the pictures here in Lambert, one of the crew people said, you guys like a break? You know, we've been watching you guys chasing us for 40 miles, and you guys must be getting hot and thirsty. We got a fridge full of pop in there. If you guys want some, have all you want. So in the building we go, and we were in there. They had the air conditioning in there. It was so cold, I could swear you could play the Rangers and the Canadians like they do at Madison Square Garden in there. That's how cold the air conditioning was, okay? And it was really soppy outside. It was just amazing stuff. Well, yeah, and this is a little souvenir they have from Time. Real IC coal tower. I have no idea if it's still there. It wouldn't surprise me because I don't think the CN would really, you know, make a deliberate effort to get rid of something like this unless it was a problem and nobody really knows about it down there. I'm sure the IC people that are left are probably doing what they can to either hide it and or make sure it's kept, okay? Like I said, you can, again, there's some of your arable land there. There's some farming. You want to know what that crop is there, by the way? Can anybody take a good guess what that would be? You can tell by the look of it. Anybody want to take a guess what this stuff is?
Soybeans?
No. Think a little bit deeper and you'll get the answer.
Potatoes?
No. I'll give you a hint. What's in here is an early crop you can't eat it. You wear it.
Oh.
It's cotton.
Yeah.
Cotton.
That's what cotton looks like when it's growing, okay? There's another one there. By the end of the summer, well, put it this way, by September, you start seeing white puffs all over the place. Looks like a snowstorm after a while. That means it's ready to get taken in, okay? There's corn. For all you know, it could be Illinois, right?
Yeah.
And here's the afternoon thunderstorms, of course, just like around here, probably down around there. You got incredible humidity about 2 o'clock in the afternoon every single day. The clouds build up, and usually you get a downpour of some kind for maybe an hour. Then the sun comes out and it's all over until tomorrow. Okay. It's like a daily show. So depending on where I am and what time of day it is, you'll probably see this kind of a setting. And I'll show you worse as we go on. Okay. It gets funny as hell sometimes. This might be a cotton field that's already taken out right here. Okay. Because of course it's done by machine now. You don't pick it by hand like you used to. Like what was the movie? The Color of Purple, I believe, or something like that.
Yes, the color purple.
Yeah. There you go. There's more here. Okay. And this is in November. So yeah, that's the year's growth is all gone now. There's one of your machines right there. I don't know if it's for the cotton, but it's one of the ones they use. Love the name Money, but I don't think there's very much money there at all. Okay. Maybe it was a fantasy for someone. There's Grenada Junction. So Grenada Junction means that you're getting down in toward Jackson. Okay. But not that you're not there, but you're getting there. Greenwood, this was, I believe, very late. Now, this would be the train to Chicago. I think it was delayed when it passed me that night. And if you notice, it's raining now. Okay, this is about 8 o'clock at night. So there's your evening thunderstorms. Again, they come and they go, they move on, and you might not see them again until the next day at the worst possible time when you're trying to take your pictures. Okay. So actually, if you notice in the second shot, the rain stopped. Let's try this again. Okay. And this is the first thing in the morning the next day. You never even know it was raining at all. Okay? Same place. That's an edible growth of some kind there. I don't know what. You notice the white blots here? Guess what that is? See it? Over here?
Right, yeah.
Dots. Which tells you it is cotton. That's the new
Okay.
crop. You notice the date?
Oh, that's
October.
right, October, right, yes.
So now is when it comes out. September, October, usually by November, it's all gone. Okay. Anyway, that's what it looks like for what you see. BVDs of the future. This is called Shula. Sounds like SCH, Southern pronouncement. This place, when I was there, we stayed somewhere not too far from here. I can't remember where it was, but anyway, every night, the modest population, again, it's probably here maybe 100 to 200 people, okay? And every night at 7 o'clock, they went to the local convenience store, which is pretty big, for a reason. They have the state drawing every day for the number. Mississippi lottery, let's call it, okay? Like New York lottery. And every night the number comes out, and that store is absolutely stuffed for about 15 minutes. Everybody goes and they put $1 or so on the number and everything else. And usually when the number comes off, I think it's at 7:05 at night, you'll hear a roar in the store because somebody in the store got a winner. Okay. And they all, they're all congratulating him and all that sort of thing. And then they all leave, and the floor in the store and the parking lot is loaded with dead sales tickets. Looks like Wall Street in some way. Okay.
Like a racetrack floor.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. Okay. Makes you think about Fred Gwynn. Remember Fred Gwynn?
Oh, yeah, from the Monsters cars.
Actually, this is the only picture I got of an actual former Wisconsin Central SD 45 used by CN after the merger. I don't know how long these lasted, but I don't think it was all that awful long, okay? Because Wisconsin Central was known for their copious maintenance for their motive power, even though it was ancient stuff. They kept it going way past its lifetime. So the CN took advantage of that. And this thing here is probably at this point, that unit's probably 35 hard years of use, and she's still going for hundreds of miles with tons and tons and tons of payload. Okay. It was just renumbered slightly, I think. A 2018 with a IC paint still there, what there is of it. You'll notice, by the way, the one nod, they did put air conditioning on the SD70s finally. When I saw them in 2000 and 2001, there was no air conditioning on these things. And you were expected to bear it up, suck it in, and, we're the IC, we can take that, okay? And in here, even like a 2006, a unit like this was considered to be used by lazy people because they couldn't handle the heat and the humidity, and they got the air conditioning blasting in the cab, okay? And that's what they were making fun of them, like, yeah, you're gonna make yourself fall asleep pretty soon because you're so comfortable. These units it's amazing, they're still going. I mean, they're 25 years old now, roughly, a lot of them. That's a meat in the making. That's another part of a meat, the same meat. There was 4 trains, okay? This is the 4th one here. And Yazoo City. This was a station that was added for Amtrak when they rerouted away from Grenada. Again, it had to be the early 90s or something like that, and they actually constructed Amtrak with its own money, built the station because Grenada was going to lose its service, okay? And the big thing with Yazoo City that I remember, it had no less, I counted, and within a block, it had 7 famous fried chicken establishments, okay? You get the idea how they eat stuff down there, okay? And do you want chitlins? You want, what do you call it? The breakfast thing there, grits, you name it, it's all here, okay? If you like Southern cooking, Southern eating, just have lots and lots of napkins. I mean, a ton of napkins, and you'll be all set, okay? You'll never forget it. You really won't. This is in south of Yazoo, between there and Jackson. It passes through such as there is a mountain range in the state of Mississippi. I don't know what it's called. I don't know. I don't think it's part of the Appalachians or anything like that. But it's like a breakaway range of high hills or low mountains. And that's why you have a windy railroad right of way to make it through this thing. I suspect that's why this part of the main line might have been built later than the old Grenada district, because the Grenada district kind of went around all this stuff, okay? So Bentonia, we're getting into the outer suburbs of Jackson, the famous city of Jackson, Mississippi. That was a big song about 1969.
Yes.
Jackson.
I'm going to Jackson.
Country music.
Yeah.
For you Jets fans, you know who you are. I'll tell you a little story. When the New England Patriots went to their very first Super Bowl in 1986, it was Super Bowl 20. They were playing the Chicago Bears in New Orleans at the Superdome. Okay. And one of the big problems they had, there were so many New Englanders that were going to New Orleans to root on their Patriots against the Bears. And of course, the Bears killed the heck out of them, as it turned out. But the point is that in order for them to get accommodations for the game in New Orleans, the closest a lot of them could get was Jackson. So on the radio, local radio, every day when they had the report about how the fans are, getting their hotel room, their flights, everything else for the Super Bowl, don't forget, it's their very first time. Everybody's really excited. And this radio station would play the song about Jackson. I'm going to Jackson. just to bust their butt. Okay. So yeah, like I said, we're getting, way down toward, almost quite into Jackson itself. Another little story here in Pocahontas, I believe, was the place. I was with Chris Blaze, and we got the rented car. No, we know the trains are coming in about an hour. Okay. I went into the little town of Pocahontas. Lo and behold, there was a gold painted 1976 Cadillac de Seville, a soft top, convertible. Why is that special? Because the damn car had Illinois plates. Holy shit, I know that guy. I said to Chris, I know this guy. So I went to the car, and sure enough, here he comes, the guy. Now, by this time, this is 2001. I worked at CTA in 1981, okay? The Seville was the same car he had when he worked at CTA. He was a supervisor on the bus at Archer Division where I worked, okay? So this is where he was from originally. What happened when he retired from CTA, he just went home. And he lives like a king down there now, okay? So anyway, oh man, you should have seen, he looked at me. Are you George? Is that Big George from Archer? You gotta be kidding me. And the two of us like old friends. I was amazed what you find out here in the middle of nowhere, okay? Not only that, he then took me to somebody's house and he said, they're gonna give you a lunch for free, it's on me. And whoever it was, it's like this, the queen of the village or something like that. She's got her own kitchen and she made everything for me and Chris that day. We ate enough for the whole day while we're waiting for the train to come. And I kept telling them, well, we know there's a train coming, should be coming in about, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. And they say, well, when you hear the train, because you can hear the train horn like a mile away, go take your picture. But, we're great. It's great for you to be here, that you remember me and remember us. And I just, he was just thrilled. And so were we, really. It made the day, really did. Okay. So there's a story that you couldn't get anywhere else. Okay. So now you're into Jackson. If you look at it real quick, you might think you're in Fulton. It almost looks the same, but it isn't. Okay. And like Fulton, there's one overpass that you can actually see the railroad. That's the Grenada. I'm showing, pointing to the screen here. This is the Grenada district coming in at you. Okay. And that's the Yazoo district here. That's where they come together. Follow? So that's it for that section. We got one more.
If you don't go through if it doesn't go through the Grenada district anymore, that means that it bypasses Vaughan, Mississippi, where Casey Jones had his famous accident. That was in
Right.
Vaughan, which is just south of Durant.
I
on
would
the
guess
Grenada.
so. I would guess so. The Yazoo district, of course, that was a freight bypass. That's what it was designed to be. Okay. Like I said, there really wasn't any population over there then, and there really isn't much now, but they just try to consolidate their resources for one main line, which is good for the rail fans because everybody's in the same place. You don't have to wander all over the place to figure out which train is going where and all that things like years ago. Okay. Anyway, but no. Okay, so anyway, this is in the city of Jackson. You can't see the platform, believe it or not. It's like just down the road there behind me. The platform is right here. Okay. That's for Jackson, Mississippi. This is a hotel here that's derelict. That's that's the city's skyline right there. The entire skyline. An abandoned hotel. Okay. And that's the way it was then. I'll tell you a little bit also inside baseball. My therapist that I've been seeing or was seeing from March to early June, she was in Jackson, Mississippi, and every week when I'd have to get together on a video conference, she'd be in Jackson and I'd be up here in Massachusetts. We'd be going at it for an hour. We got away together very nicely. Okay. I mean, very, very close. So I sent her a bunch of pictures from Jackson from this collection here. And she knew where some of it was, didn't know all of it. And I kept asking her, so I see the background in Jackson. It's showing me, it's advertising the city of Jackson and how wonderful place it is. This is 20 years ago. And she says to me at one point, well, I'll tell you what, it ain't no much different now than it was back then. Things are pretty quiet in Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, there's your derelict hotel there. Now, this train here is CN going north. It's I'm not sure what it's carrying, but it's got some kind of a or at least some of the train is some kind of a commodity. It could be coal, it could be anything. There's minerals, there's all kinds of unit trains here and there. Okay. There's a grain train right there, you see. There's your manifest. So this, notice the symbol here, it shares the trackage with the KCS, what I call the speedway between Meridian, Mississippi and Greater Dallas, Texas. Okay, I followed that in 2006. That's another show for the future sometime, if I can salvage the slides. I think they're okay. Do any of you guys know a fellow named Jim McGinty? In New York, named Jim McGinty.
He was active in the,
He's an ERA guy. He works for the Transit Authority. I think he's getting ready to retire. In
Oh,
Goli.
yeah, I know Jimmy well. Yeah,
Goli,
Bill
it's
Goli,
his-
I know Jimmy well.
Yeah, okay. McGinty sold me a brick of Ektachrome slide film in 2006 at a rate cut. And he said, oh, this will be fine for your trip coming up. Well, it turns out it was expired. There's a reason it was cheaper. Okay. At the time, I was kind of dumb, I guess. So the pictures all came out, but the color is kind of out of correspondence. And if I do it through what do you call it? Adobe Photoshop, I can kind of bring it back, which is one of these pictures here. Okay. So like I said, someday maybe I can do the KCS, the Speedway. Okay.
Yeah.
Which of course is now CP, of all things.
Okay.
So this is going south from Jackson. Now we're on the, it's all main line, but we're making a quote unquote B line now to Greater New Orleans, Louisiana. Okay. Non-Amtrak, just a surviving depot. Factory new paint here, this thing. Same thing. There's a lot of depots that aren't used, okay? And here you'll notice this is from the afternoon thunderstorms. You'll see a lot more of that. This is early in the morning. It's beautiful here. Golf weather. It's probably 75 degrees or 80 at that point. Notice like October the 1st. That's during the pandemic, right during the height of the pandemic. And the trains were running, obviously, okay? And the rail fans were taking pictures, obviously. A guy from Hazelhurst I wound working with up in Boston, he was originally from here and he went in the Navy in the 1960s and wound up moving when he got out of the Navy to Brockton, Massachusetts. And I told him I was going to Hazelhurst when I was working him, and he says, he gives me like the everything to know about Hazelhurst before I went there. We stayed there overnight and everything, okay? And we were there for about 3 hours. And you know what? I'll tell you what, I think his name was Carl. He's probably gone by now. But I know what I'll tell you, Carl. I said it was a nice city in southern Mississippi. That's really all I can tell you about it, okay? In other words, it was kind of a bust, okay? After the buildup, okay? There's another Wisconsin Central. I wonder what was left by that time. Beauregard. So now you're really getting into the swampy kind of lands here. You're basically coming together here at Brookhaven. I believe this is where you join up with US 51, the local road, and Interstate 55 is your interstate that you can chase the trains with. Here's your afternoon thunder showers, okay? And there was a whole bunch of trains coming. There was like a knot of trains coming together. That's why I was standing out here waiting to get soaking wet, okay? So that was number one. This was number two, just a little bit further down. That's the train to Chicago, just starting its trip, really. This is late afternoon, probably 6 o'clock or something thereabouts. Okay, and then when that passed, this came back southbound. The express train from Chicago, quite literally in the modern day, okay? Bigachoti, Bogachita, that's right, Bogachita. Bogachita, that's how you say it. And there's a preserved Illinois Central, I'm not even sure what it's called, 482, what would that make it, a Northern or something? You tell me. I'm not a steam person, so. Anybody know what a 482 would be called?
No,
Huh?
I'm gonna have to mute
Northern,
fireworks.
yeah. I would say a northern.
Northern, okay. So if it was a Northern and it's meant to climb, there wasn't much climbing to do on the Illinois Central. Therefore, I would assume they were bought like that for speed, not for climbing.
Yes.
Okay, and I mean speed. I'm sure that I'll bet you anything this old lady here could probably punch the cab up toward 100 miles an hour if she had it.
Yeah,
I will bet it. Okay.
particularly at level ground.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And of course they didn't have Harrison around yet, so the trains probably weren't that long. You know. Okay, so Macomb, there's an Amtrak stop at a surviving depot. Magnolia. Now over here, you notice the afternoon thunderstorms have had their way here. It's almost flooding the track. Probably happens every day. They don't even think twice about it. Okay. The depot is wrapped in the growth there. It actually was nicely restored, but it's hard to see it as a depot and look at the railway at the same time. And I only got one shot. So I always choose the train and try to fit the building as best I can. Chris Blaze's job, that's Chris Blaze right there. He's my partner. He was the depot person, and he would take picture after picture of the depot buildings, each corner, each elevation, you name it. Okay, so that was his job. Mine is the trains. And that's the way we worked it. Okay. And also Chris took prints, which means I couldn't have a copy of what he was taking. So now Kentwood, we enter the state of Louisiana. The 829 now, where would that be from? Do we have any idea? It's not Chicago, it's way past Chicago, that point. So 829 miles, where do you think that's coming from? Any guessing? No? What is it they said on what's his name's days off? You know, the teacher was going, anyone? I think it's Fulton, Kentucky. Okay, I think his number
Fulton,
here,
Kentucky.
832 miles, 0.7 on the signal there. Okay. Tangipahoa. Fluker, that's another great name. The names are amazing. Okay. There's an Arcola in Illinois that's very famous. I think that's what this is named after. So somebody must have been homesick when they were building the railroad back in the 1850s. Okay. Amine. I can tell you that for sure. And that, by the way, that's the police department transmitter there. So is that. I guess that's what they use the depots for, okay? I don't know if maybe he looked like the sheriff in the heat of the night. I don't know. There's Hammond. The Hammond is the biggest city that you have down this way until you start getting to New Orleans. Again, there's the wetness from your afternoon thunderstorms. So this is probably late afternoon, early evening, right after supper time. That's an Eric Zustowitz picture. Ponchatoula. Okay, Ponchatoula was an interesting place. There was a restaurant in the depot. Okay, that's nothing special. Let me see if on the next picture, if it shows a little better. Not really. It was kind of hemmed in. It was hard. The restaurant / depot was right here on the left. It's hard to get a picture of the tank because it was hemmed in. And I really, like I say, my thing is getting the train, the depot, I'll let Chris take care of that. Well, they had a tank here. It was right next to me when I'm taking the picture. It's probably about 8 by 8. Had water in there about 4 feet deep. And it had, sort of a slight fogginess in the water. And it must have had about a dozen crocodiles in there. Live crocodile. Like up here you see live lobster. You know how you go to the restaurant, live lobster? That was live crocodiles, just the same thing. They're laying around, they're playing around and stuff like that. And we were watching them just as much as we were watching the train. It was really stressful. And this is just after the day thunderstorms passed. The tank was not covered, so the crocodiles were out there in the rain. They're probably out in the rain all the time. They could care less. They didn't even notice it. Okay. And this is Manchac. This is a causeway. Okay. So at this point, actually, this is right after a very severe thunderstorm breakout that afternoon. Or maybe it's coming in. Yeah, I think it's coming in. That's what it is. I'm trying to get the shot. And it just happened to work out that Amtrak was here at the right time. I was in the right place at the right time. Okay.
Yep.
And this was sitting, waiting for the Amtrak train to go south so it could start going north. Okay. Yeah, and actually that's the phase where it's gray clouds that you can't really see the clouds. You can hear distant thunder, and the wind is starting to build up. You know how that goes? The wind builds up. and then eventually the thunder gets closer, and eventually you start seeing lightning. And the next thing you know, there is an entire wall of water. You'll see that eventually. Mike Palmieri, who took this picture, was at our Railroad Archives. I knew him locally. He used to be assigned to our parish here in Massachusetts back in the 1990s. He travels around. So this is actually Father Michael M. Palmieri. Okay. I don't know where he is now. He's still around Greater Boston someplace. Really nice guy, really great guy. Kenner is in the suburbs of New Orleans. This gives you a little bit of a glimpse of how the railroad was built. You notice, like I said, it was very watery, swampy, and all they did was just keep building up and building up and building up and building up the base. Okay. Probably at this point, it's probably 10 or 15 feet deep. So the original track was way down here somewhere. And they just kept building it up, building it up, building it up, building it up. And this is what they got left. This railroad here is at this point, if that's 1855, that's what, 150 years old by that time of buildup. That's how they did it. Okay. So now you're in the suburbs of Greater New Orleans here. Probably about, I'd say less than 15 miles west of NOUPT. So I got this location. It was a nice location in the early afternoon. That's your train going to Chicago. It's basically just starting its trip. Okay. I went around the track and across the street, and this is about an hour later. Like I told you, here comes the wind, the clouds, and things start building up, and then the thunder is distant, and then it gets closer and closer, and the lightning gets closer and closer. And here comes your, as I said, your wall of water, and that's literally what you got here. And there I am with the camera, and I'm trying to hold the case over the lens and everything else, and the picture just happened to work out quite well, I thought. But man, that rain was falling so hard, it felt like it was rubber bullets on my arms. Okay. Amazing stuff. And then we just got in the car, and of course the car got soaked inside. Okay. Here we are about an hour or so later, same day, and you'd never know it. It looks wonderful, you know. Mays Yard is just outside New Orleans. That's its main freight yard for Greater New Orleans. East Bridge Junction talks about the end of the long Huey Long Bridge that really is used now by UP and BNSF to get from New Orleans starting west. Okay. So the IC is actually where the bridge lands on the main line. And they have shared trackage for a little while before everybody starts to disperse into the city of New Orleans. Okay. So this actually, at this point, this was early merged UPSP in 2001. It's only 4 years. Brand new locomotive at the time for KCS. That's way before the Southern Bell scheme, stuff like that. Train number is 9 going eastbound, which seems like it's backwards, but I didn't know much about KCS scheduling back then. I really still don't, because the only thing I studied really was the Meridian Speedway. That was where we were going. Okay. God knows what's going on with CP. This one had just come off the bridge. I think this may have been heading north toward Atlanta, but I'm not really sure. Okay. Local drayage. That's an ancient unit there. Actually, that's a tunnel motor. You notice that? Southern Pacific tunnel motor. The survivor, because by that time it's 7 years past the merger. Unlike Wisconsin Central, unlike Wisconsin Central, Southern Pacific was not known for particular maintenance on their units. They just kept throwing whatever would run in a bunch of lash ups, like, you know, any particular train, you'd have 6 SD42-T-2Ts and so forth like that. Of the 6, if you're lucky, you might find 3 that are useful. Okay. The rest, as the saying was back then, the rest were rolling boat anchors. In other words, dead in tow. Okay. So that's a spillway. Again, since I haven't been there, I have no idea what would have happened with Katrina, because this was the problem when Katrina built up so fast. All the waterways were just overwhelmed, and it was like squeezing a toothpaste tube. The water just went all over everything. So God knows what happened since 2001. I'm sure this whole scene could be different. In the city of New Orleans, Carrollton Junction is kind of toward the end of the St. Charles streetcar, kind of. So it's it would be a bit of a walk, but you could get there from there, okay? And then take the streetcar back to your hotel if you want. Okay? So the last location, of course, is getting into New Orleans Union Passenger Terminal. There's 3 trains that use it. The first, of course, is our favorite, the city of New Orleans, number 59 showing here. It had just arrived, and of course, every train that comes into NOUPT is backwards so that the power is outwards, okay? For the next train, for the next trip. There really isn't any maintenance there or storage there, so whatever train comes in the previous day will leave the next day going somewhere. It isn't always where they came in from, especially now with Amtrak. I'm not sure how they're arranging their equipment now, but back in those days, the city of New Orleans had its train, the 1 and 2, the Limited had its train, and the Southern Crescent had its train, because everything had operating environments that required that. I think they might have put 1 and 2 and 58 and 59 somewhat together since that. Okay. Now, New Orleans UPT in those days, 2000, 2001, 2002, if you knew the train was going to be there, you could go through the gate. Passenger terminal itself might be loaded with people waiting to load the train. Okay. If you got there within an hour of departure, you would know enough. You could go right through the platform, down to the head end, get your pictures, and get the hell out of there before anybody really saw you. Okay, but you get them. After 9/11, they put cops there. They put guards there. I think they put concertina wire. I don't know what, but anyway, they made a big deal about no access to the platform after that point. Okay, so you're pretty lucky to get these 3 shots that you got. So there's your last picture of the city of New Orleans. If you've ridden it, or as it is now, pretty much that's what you'd see. And then just to show you the others, there's your crescent. Now this one, I think if you'll notice, this is the power that had come south on the 59 in the other picture, and it was prepared going back to I was actually coming in from the crescent, okay, from Washington. So it was, you know, seesawing from one train to the other. I don't know what they do nowadays, okay? And of course, the train comes in when it comes in, and that's why I get the picture, whatever time of day that happened to be. Okay, I believe it, if you'll notice with here, all this stuff, that tells you it probably had just arrived within the past half hour, perhaps. And they're still trying to figure out what's where there, okay? And then this is the Limited, the Sunset Limited. It's so long, this was 18 cars long, that they had on track 1, maybe 2, but they really only used 1, because that's the only place they can put the train that's the platform's long enough to berth everything. And if you notice, it kind of cants around, snakes around the curve here. That's why you can't really get a good straight shot of it, okay? Of course, again, now you just can't get any pictures at all. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's the end of our show. Okay,
Great program.
appreciate
Oh,
it.
that was
It was
great.
worth waiting for.
Now, did I turn off the share screen?
Oh, what? No, we're still seeing it.
Okay, maybe that's, let me see. That's what I want to do is turn it off. Or can you do it from that end? Let me see now. Because I kind of lost where I'm at here. Okay,
Oh,
what are you seeing?
We're seeing, look like your computer,
the files.
all of the icons. And
all of your
no,
icons.
Okay.
of a woman.
I can't get to the show again. Do you think you can shut it off from that end?
Maybe Steve could turn it off.
Yeah, just stop
Okay.
the screen share.
Okay, let me click. Great. Let me see, screen. Well, you could just,
I got it. There we are.
okay, good, okay,
Hey, there
very
we
good.
go.
That's better.
Great show, Gigi.
Yeah,
I
that
enjoyed
was
it.
Really great
excellent.
show, yes.
You
So
brought
my
it to
pleasure
life.
as always, and we'll see what we can do about the coming year.
Yeah,
Yes, we
You know what
will.
I'm gonna do. It's gonna take me
It'll
probably,
be a good year.
takes me a few weeks to get each show together, but I'd be happy to do it as long as all the machines work. Don't forget, this is all
oh, it'd
on
be wonderful.
old computers. The one that scans the slides, that computer is operated on XP.
Really? Pretty old.
And I have to get my tech to actually find a way to keep XP alive.
Yeah, right.
But we
That
do
would
it.
be a
It
challenge.
was a good system. That was a good system.
Yes, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
So any other questions, comments? I had a blast myself.
Oh, it was,
Yeah, definitely.
Oh,
I
those are
really
beautiful
liked some of the
pictures.
background.
Hey, nice, yeah.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Some years ago, I took a train from Jackson, Mississippi to through Yazoo up to Memphis. Unfortunately, too much of the trip was in the dark. I don't think I had much choice of trains, and I did want to sightsee Jackson.
Okay,
Oh,
Oh,
well, that's the way Amtrak is. You got one shot at one location.
yeah.
I mean, if it was a real railroad for passengers, you'd have 2 or 3 trains a day at least,
Yeah.
wherever they go.
Yeah,
Okay,
but when they only have one train a day, just as Mike said, you can come through there at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and not see any.
Yeah.
our national
It's wonderful.
passenger railroad is now 52 years old.
Amazing.
And I think they're still pretending that they want to run a passenger railroad.
That's the idea officially.
Because that, I
I
mean,
think
that
that they're
used to
still
be-
pretending that it's a temporary experiment. That was what they said it was at the
Yeah,
Yeah,
beginning.
right.
That way.
They said, well, this is just an experiment.
Half
It's
a
not a real
century.
Yeah.
railroad.
a 52.
Richard M is laughing his
It's
butt
still
off.
experimenting.
You remember who Richard M was, right?
Yeah.
My grandfather
He's
used to call
looking
him
down on
Ricky Dicky.
Right back
But
that
no,
way.
seriously, I mean, in all my years of photography on railroads, like I said, on the main lines, that really goes from 1991 with the slides to 08, and then I most recently really was 2013 was the last big trip. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Years, all those thousands of miles, everything I did was always an eye toward how to redevelop a passenger railway system to do it, that you could do it and so forth. And all I get then and now is the stupid, well, I shouldn't chew that word. I don't know. I didn't say that. I didn't say stupid. The high-speed rail advocates, okay?
Right.
And like I said, all I can tell you is that, especially New York, I get this question all the time. When the show comes up, I'll use somebody's name, actually. Do you know a Todd Glickman?
Yes,
He's originally
the
from
weatherman.
Okay, yeah. He works at
Yeah.
MIT. He works at MIT. He lives near
Oh.
Boston. He actually broadcasts now and has for some time from his home on the North Shore near Boston. He's got his studio
Wow.
for WCBS set up in his house.
Amazing.
And they broadcast from there. Anyway, Todd Glickman is constantly doing business travel for MIT, frequently to Asia, especially to China. And Todd and I are always going at it because every time Todd and I talk, he says, I went from city A to city B 2 weeks ago, and the train went 375 miles an hour, and we were there. It was 500 miles, and we were there in 3.5 hours. Well, that's wonderful. That's just peachy, Todd. So, of course, his question is, why? We're America. We're supposed to be the best country in the world. Why can't we do that?
Yeah.
I tell him the answer over and over again, and I guess he just doesn't want to hear it, or he just doesn't understand. He's a smart guy. Okay. Does any of you know the answer to that question? It's very simple.
We don't fund it.
What's that?
We don't fund it.
No.
There's another, we
can put all the money
don't
into
have the
it.
density.
That's not the problem. The underlying problem is the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. That's what's killing everything. That's why when they built the railroads, don't forget, railroads in the United States are much older than they are in China. Okay.
Oh, that's
And
true.
in China, the Chinese government can do and take
They just
anything they
bulldoze.
want, anywhere they need it, whatever they want. The funding is
No
not,
eminent domain over
the
there.
engineering's not an issue. Nothing's an issue. In the United
Right.
States, if you want 1 inch of land for a new right of way, you have to pay fair value.
Yeah.
I think
Period.
that's
No,
only, fair.
And
getting
the Chinese built to American standards too.
What's
They
that?
built to our the Chinese built to our standards.
Oh,
The
same
Chinese
game.
do anything they want
Because
because
we-
China,
The first one,
there's no
we helped them build.
constitution like
Built
this.
to our
Yeah.
standards.
And I don't think there ever will be. Okay.
No.
So Todd, people like Todd Glickman,
Different society.
I understand what you want to do, but if you really want to ride high-speed railway, go to China, okay? And just, enjoy yourself.
Amongst some other places.
Yeah, and
Here it's
what you
problematic.
can do, the Acela, when that was done in 2000, I was involved with the planning session with that, the planning
Oh,
section with that, okay? Larry was there at MTA back then.
oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay. But anyway, Amtrak did a marvelous job of making the best of what they had to work with at the time. And they used a
Yeah.
lot of history. It was New Haven history, Penn Central history, Pennsylvania, you name it. They had to learn all that stuff from scratch because by that time, all the engineering sections for all those railroads were long gone. And they had to start from zero, and they did a marvelous job building the Acela as it came to be in 2000. It was really
Right.
something. I don't think everybody understood that and what it took. And you just can't
Oh,
simply
yeah.
do this one day and say, we want to start the Acela between Chicago and St. Louis.
No.
Well, first
Yeah,
of all,
but
my
what
first
about,
question was something like that. Again, just to run off my mouth a little bit. If you're talking about Chicago to St. Louis in particular, and you want to build an Acela between Chicago and St. Louis, my first question would be, who and why would anybody want to go to St. Louis?
question.
That's a
Yeah,
good
but-
point.
I'm sure Cora is insulted now because I know her family.
I'll stop the recording.
But St.
Touche.
Louis, oh man,